Hey friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Adanna, and on this channel we talk about all things stories and self-care. So books that we love, books that we're reading, books that we want to read, authors that we love, mental health, and self-care tips. If you have not subscribed yet, definitely subscribe down below and hit the notification bell so that you are notified every time that I upload a video. Also follow me on Instagram and Twitter, Adanna L, where you'll see more of some of the behind the scenes content of this particular channel. Today I'll be reviewing Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I referenced this book in my quarterly wrap-up in March, where I read this book along with a couple of other books. And so if you haven't watched that video yet, definitely watch that before moving on. However, I did want to do a standalone video for this book because I just really enjoyed it. I loved this story, and there are so many elements of it that I wanted to go ahead and do a standalone video where I talk about a quick synopsis of the book, what I actually liked about the book, what I didn't like so much, and just overall who would I recommend this book for. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So Where the Crawdads Sing is a literary fiction book by Delia Owens. This is Delia's first book that she published in 2018, and let me tell you, for a first book, she did all right. She did her thing. She definitely did her thing. It's a book that has been on so many different book club lists. It's been many book club picks, and I'm really late to the party, but it is definitely a book that I was kind of sort of wondering whether or not it was worth the hype. And so we're about to find out. This book is about a young woman named Kaya Clark who grows up basically by herself in the North Carolina marshlands. She's often barefoot and wild. For various reasons, starting with her mother, every single member of her family ends up actually leaving her up until by the time she turns 10, she's completely alone. She then becomes to be known as the Marsh Girl and is really left alone by the townspeople. Some of the people consider her weird. They don't want anything to do with her. They don't actually want to help her, but they also don't bother her. That's actually something that Kaya doesn't mind. She loves the marsh. She loves exploring the marsh and just exploring the environment that she's a part of, and she just loves it. However, in 1969, the town's popular jock, prince, whatever, Chase Andrews, is actually found dead in the marsh. And all of the locals, of course, automatically suspect her. So this story is told mostly sequentially from about 1950 all the way through to about 1969 when we find out actually who killed Chase Andrews. And there's also a bit of interjections about the investigation and about the trial kind of sprinkled throughout the story. I really liked this book. I think it is worth the hype. I really truly like the fact that this is a story about the underdog. I love stories about the underdog. I love seeing how you give someone the worst of the worst circumstances and they figure it out. They don't let that bother them. She is true embodiment of that underdog story. I also really enjoyed how the author was able to insert different pieces of information about the marshland that really helped bring it to life. I am very much a city girl through and through, and I couldn't tell you different types of birds or different types of insects or, different types of grass, or I don't know, but I can't tell you any of that. But in reading about Kaya and just really reading about how she enjoyed all those different pieces, I was able to see the different types of birds that she saw. I was able to put myself in that marshland and kind of imagine what it is that lit Kaya up. And so I think the author did a really good job of explaining the marsh in a way that was not just oh, this is just country, she's just a country bumpkin, or lowbrow. It showed me the beauty of that living, that type of life. And I really appreciated how the author was able to bring that to life. I also think that there were so many beautiful moments in this book where the author the writing, it was just beautiful. It was just, there was just a lot of, I just kept annotating so many different parts of the book because, and highlighting different things and writing and oh my God, that's amazing. There were really a lot of just beautiful phrases, the beautiful sentences, and I really enjoyed just kind of finding little nuggets of beauty throughout the story. So I really enjoyed that. If I had to choose one thing that I potentially did not like as much, I would say that it is the ending, honestly. I think that the author did an amazing job of defending Kaya in a way that you do not believe that she could have had any sort of involvement in this story, in the killing of Chase Andrews. So I think the ending, by the time we got to it, was so unrealistic that I didn't think it was true. I didn't think it could be possible. And so it's a good thing, I think, that the author was able to, again, provide that defense of her protagonist, but also it kind of left you a little bit like, well, that there's no way that could happen. And so because it was a little unrealistic, and it's not like a sci-fi or some sort of different type of unrealistic plot, it kind of made me a little bit like, there's no way that could happen. So I mentioned that I really, truly annotated and highlighted the heck out of this book. And so I really wanted to talk about one specific passage that it like gutted me. Not even gutted in a bad way, but just like, oh my God, like I need to sit with that sentence or that paragraph for a little bit longer. And that's this. When Tate, who is a character that is in Kaya's life in a way, when he's actually teaching her how to read, he says this: "You can read, Kaya. There will never be a time again when you can't read." It ain't just that, she spoke almost in a whisper. "I wasn't aware that words could hold so much. I didn't know a sentence could be so full." Oh. And when you just take a moment to think about that. As someone that is a book and story lover, I'm often reading sentences. I'm often reading paragraphs. But there are those moments where you're like, there's so much hope in that sentence. There's so much despair in that sentence. Like I feel exactly how that character is feeling just because of the adjective, choice, or the way, the tone that is implied with the certain words that are used. Sentences can be so full of meaning, whether it's good, it's bad, it's indifferent. And that sentence where it's like, to think like a sentence can be so full, I never actually really thought about it, but that is very true. Sentences can hold so much weight. They can hold so much meaning. They can hold so much life. And so that kind of just like stopped me in my tracks. I was like, oh, that's it, marinate on that. That's something. So I just truly, there's so many other little quotes and little pieces that I kind of like was like, oh my God, that's amazing. But that one really stood out to me, so I definitely had to share that. All right, so all in all, do I recommend this book? Yes. It is rated as I think a 4.5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I personally gave it a 5 stars. I think this book is an amazing book, and I think it's definitely worth the hype. A friend of mine has already started reading this book, and she said that it's a little slow for her, and I can kind of see how it kind of maybe takes a couple chapters to get in. I personally didn't have that problem. I was hooked from the beginning, but I do think that it is worth slogging through and getting through it if you do think that it's a little slower, because especially in the middle and in the end, it really wraps up so beautifully in a way that you're like, that was a good book, So I would definitely recommend it. Again, and also if you love seeing that underdog story, seeing that person kind of rise from the ashes and do the dang on thing, then you would definitely be able to identify with Kaya, because she is that, underdog personified. I would say that if you have any sort of triggers when it comes to loneliness or child abuse, maybe reconsider reading this. I don't think that it's a huge theme in this particular book, but it can maybe trigger you if you're really sensitive to that sort of thing. There were some moments where I cried, just because, again, this is a very young woman dealing with loneliness and being by herself. And so as someone that's kind of sort of dealt with that a little bit, definitely not to the extent that she has, that was a little bit of a trigger for me. And so there were some moments where I cried, but I think that it was still definitely worth reading. And so overall, I definitely give it 2 thumbs up. All right, and so that is it. That is my review of Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you enjoyed this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. Also subscribe down below and hit the notification bell so that you're notified of every single time that I upload. Also follow me on Instagram and Twitter, Adanna L, if you have not done so already. And that is it. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.